G'day footy fans, Dane here from Clarkey's NRL column, and I'm joined by my usual co-host, Ozza from NRL In My Opinion. Welcome to the Set of Six podcast, a weekly podcast where we touch on six of the biggest talking points from the week that was in rugby league. Oliver, how are you this afternoon?
Pretty good, champion yourself.
Yeah, really good. Look guys, today we've got six questions coming up. We've got, is Tamalolo the greatest forward, or is he on the way to becoming the greatest forward in the game? Of all time, apologies there. How was the refereeing in round one? Of course, it wouldn't be any controversy without referees involved in rugby league. Then we're going to talk about the Michael Jennings incident and whether this 1 week suspension is fair. We'll move to attacking the kicker's legs. Should we be lighter or harsher on penalties? Should the 5-minute sin bin return? And we'll finish on contender or pretender. We'll give whether your side is a contender or pretender in our opinion with one accompanying sentence. So let's start off with Jason Tamalolo. He ran for over 300 metres against the Dragons. Pretty formidable forward pack. We'll start with this, Oliver. Is he the greatest forward within the NRL currently playing?
Currently, yes. Currently.
And what about all-time? All-time players encompassing every single forward we've ever had play our game. Is it too early to say that?
Too early to say that. And look, in today's game, the way the game's played today compared to, back then, the good old days, it's hard to say someone is the best because the game has changed and evolved, obviously, so much since then. So it would be really hard to say, but definitely I think, one day, one of the best.
I agree. I think he's well on the way, but I wouldn't say he's there yet because as you touched on, 20 years ago, you watched footage from the 80s, guys. It was a completely different sport almost. Let's go over some of the things Tamalolo does have for him. He was the first forward to run over 5,000 metres in 1 year. Obviously, he ran for over 300 metres last Saturday against the Dragons, so I don't think anyone is doubting his attacking ability. The question mark that comes into Jason Tamalolo's game is his defensive. Obviously, as attack and defense, there's two aspects of rugby league. Now, he only made 15 tackles on Saturday, which is, pretty low for someone who started on the edge but then moved to the middle, obviously when he was playing lock. Do you think Tamalolo has an issue with his defense, or do you think he's perfectly fine with his current game style?
Well, if you're a forward, you are expected, obviously, to make those running meters, but you're also expected to be sort of, it's like the main sort of area on the field for defense, isn't it, the forward pack? So that's definitely something you need to improve on. And if we're talking about the best forwards of all time, you've got to be able to defend to be up there. So, look, definitely you can't just go, although it is an impressive attacking game, there's got to be a sort of defensive game to either match that or better that.
Yeah, no arguments from me. Just going over the last of my notes here. For me, his attack makes up for any sort of lapses in defense that he may have. When he won the Dally M medal in 2016, he then improved in the 2017 season. He had 129 tackle breaks. That's just insane. Then he went on to have 82 tackle breaks, and last year, 97 tackle breaks. He is only 25 years of age. So I'll finish by saying, yes, he is the best forward in the game now. You could make the argument he's the best lock of all time. But at age 25, there's still so much more footy to come from Jason Tamalolo. I do believe by the time he retires, we will say he is the best lock of all time. Whether we will say he's the best forward of all time remains to be seen. Anything further from you before we move on to tackle 2?
Only that, and I guess we see this with all the good players as well. I believe in 2018, at least last year. Remember, we're going off one game for this season, a really good game. But in 2018, I personally think that he was a little bit off. Obviously, a poor season for the Cowboys as well. So, obviously, as you said as well, he's still 25. So, let's not forget, yes, although he can go on to these great feats, we have seen a little inkling that maybe, and this is just me being cynical and everything, maybe there could be a bit of a drop-off. But let's be honest, I don't think that's going to happen.
The one thing I will say that the biggest headline I see coming from Jason Tamalolo's career is, I'm not sure when, you might be able to fill me in here, when the new TV deal is signed, and with that, obviously the salary cap set to increase, he's going to be sitting on $1 million, and we're going to be saying, why the hell is he on that money? He should be on so much more. But obviously, 10-year, $1 million a year, it was a smart move for him to sign that contract. We'll move to question 2. How was the refereeing in round 1, Ozza? Now, I have to ask, because last year, obviously, it was an atrocious start to the season. I don't have another word. I think atrocious, disastrous, shit probably fills the billet as well. Terrible. I think you get the point here. I'm not getting at too many great words there. I mean, we were used to, in some ways, fast-flowing football, and it just slowed down with an immense increase of penalties. How do you think the refs did this round? Do you think they've cut out those penalties, and are you liking what you're seeing?
I'm liking it a bit better. It could improve a bit. Obviously, a couple of issues. Personally, I just want to get it out of the way because we're both Titans fans as well. I do believe the referees were a bit harsh on both sides at times. I believe there were some 50-50 calls as well. There were a couple in the Panthers-Eels game that went the Eels' way and a few that went the Raiders' way. So I think maybe the 50-50 calls, they might need to spend a bit of time seeing what happens. For example, I think there was one set early in the second half of the Titans-Raiders game where it was about 3 tackles in a row. The Titans got penalised, but I honestly couldn't tell you what the penalties were for. I think maybe they would have gotten up like a second too late from the tackle and it made it look a little bad. So that is sort of stopping that free-flowing football. Like, you don't really need to penalise that. With saying that, though, I believe that if those 50-50 decisions went the Titans' way, we still would have lost. So I'm not really angry about that. I'm just saying there's a couple of little things that we could improve on. And of course, there was that penalty try decision in the Sharks-Knights game, which, look, in the end, didn't really impact the result. The Knights won. However, it was a little bit odd. We've not really seen that. Personally, I think Josh Dugan got the ball down. So I personally thought it was a try anyway, but a penalty try for Katoa as well. I don't know.
You don't seem to think it affected the game. I'll touch on that afterwards. I've got a couple notes here, but I think that directly did affect the outcome of that game, and I'll tell you why. So last year we had 127 penalties blown in round 1. This year we only had 95 guys. Mathematically speaking, that's 25% less. I really liked the Storm versus Broncos game. I thought that flowed very well. It was a great start to the year. It had that Origin feel. Obviously, it was slightly slower than Origin, but it had that Origin sort of flow where we're not stop-start penalty, etc., etc. I do think wet weather played a huge part in the stop-start footy that obviously eventuated through the round. So I think it's way too early to make a call on the decisions just yet. But thus far, I am liking what I'm seeing. Overall, I think it's a huge step in the right direction for our referees. And as I said, guys, who would want to be a ref? I mean, you're always going to upset one party. You touched on the Sony Katoa try, so I'm going to bring this up on screen now for our viewers at home. Obviously, this is for review purposes only, so no copyright can ensue. So Townsend shifts it out. Johnson gets it. And right there, Edric Lee, he takes out Sonic Katoa. And Vossi thought Dugan got there. Watching the replay now, guys, I think Dugan got there.
Josh Dugan, and he fails to regain possession.
But they said he failed to regain possession. I thought he had control. So we go back to Edric Lee here. And he does take him out. But by definition... There you go, you heard Vossi. And it was a try. Now, by definition, letter of the law, guys, to be awarded a penalty try, you must be without doubt that they were going to get there. And I don't think, beyond shadow of the doubt, you could confirm Sony Katoa would have got to that ball. Here's what I would have done, Ozza. I would have said, Edric Lee, you've committed a personal foul. You can go for 10.
Yeah, didn't they say it was a professional foul?
They did, but he wasn't sin bin because they gave the try. Okay, and you said that this didn't directly affect the outcome of the game, but hear me out here, Oliver. Edric Lee should be in the sin bin. We both agree with that.
Okay.
So let's just pretend the try isn't given, but Edric Lee's in the sin bin. Sharks are still down by 6. They score. They then have another whole 9 minutes to attack where they only have 12 people. Instead, they get that try, and whilst he should have been in the sin bin, Edric Lee, obviously, he's been with the Sharks last year, so he knows their formations. He admitted post-game, I saw the formation, I knew exactly where the ball was going to go. Townsend tries to cut out. Edgerclear goes, nah, I know that. Darts out of the line, intercept, wins the game when he should have been in the sin bin. That's my take on it anyway. You can obviously argue either side there, but for me, that decision, I thought it was incorrect, and I thought it directly affected the outcome of the game. I'm not. Can you? Am I getting through? Do you sort of agree with that now, or do you still think?
You've sort of changed me. I was thinking purely in the sense that, it didn't change the game because of, Cronulla did get the try, but Newcastle won anyway. But I didn't really think further than that. But I sort of changed my mind there.
Yeah. Last points from me before we move on to tackle 3, guys. Overall, I was very happy with the refereeing this round. I think we're taking steps in the right direction, though I'm not fully confident to say that I'm 100% happy at the moment because, as I said, there was wet weather and no doubt that affected the style of play.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, guys, let's move on to tackle 3. Michael Jennings accidentally catches Isaiah Yeo with a high tackle. He was sin-binned at the time. Fox League commentator Michael Ennis said, that's a tough call, and I'm sure a lot of us thought it at home. But now he's been suspended for a week as well. So my question is, to you, Oliver, and I'm not sure if this is an official rule, there's inklings that it could be. If a player is taken from the field due to foul play, whether it's accidental or intentional, should there be an instant sin bin for the opposing player that committed that foul?
I believe there should be.
Okay.
Whether or not that is the rule, we don't know at the moment, which is terrible that we don't know if something's a rule.
Yeah.
I'm leaning more towards that it is a rule just because of how the referee reacted. Just straight away, he said to Michael Jennings, he's going to be out for the rest of the game. You've got to go to the bin.
Mm-hmm.
But with this, I do agree with it because it makes sense. So if you take a player out that's going to have to leave the field, let's just say Isaiah Yeo did come back. He would have had to go off for 15 minutes anyway for a HIA. So that leaves Penrith down to 16 men, including their bench, for at least 15 minutes. So, it evened the playing field. Michael Jennings goes off for 10 minutes, which obviously isn't as long, and obviously Isaiah Yeo didn't come back. For at least that 10 minutes, they were both at 16 men. I mean, it seems pretty fair to me.
Well, I'm inclined to think it's not a rule. And if we flash back to only last year, Sia Soliola took Billy Slater's head off. Slater was stretchered off the field, and Soliola was only put on report, I believe.
Yeah, but we have seen inconsistent refereeing in the past, which I'm not saying... Look, as I'm saying, we're not saying this is a rule or this isn't a rule. I'm leaning more towards it is, but obviously with decisions in the past, we have seen inconsistent refereeing, so this just might be one of these cases here. I'm just saying it might be, it might not be.
Yeah, I'll touch on the yes side of things. So yes, if a player commits a foul, intentional or accidental, they should be sin-binned. Well, it's consistent straight away. You touched on inconsistencies. It tidies up that area of, I guess, inconsistency. Should he have not? And in turn, that cleans up the game. And it makes players accountable for their actions, whether they are intentional or completely accidental. But on the no side, I mean, you can argue just as much no here, guys, because if you accidentally do something, accidents happen in a collision sport. I'm certain in saying this, and I obviously don't know, but I'm certain that Michael Jennings did not go in with the intention to collect Isaiah Yeo over the head. And in fact, I would argue Isaiah Yeo was falling into the tackle, so it was accidental. So it's a really tough one for Jennings to miss out on a week. I don't really know if I sit on the yes or no here, but I will. If I had to pick, I'll say no. You shouldn't be instantly sin-binned, because there's just too many variables that can affect the outcome. A player could be falling. It could, as I said, be a complete accident. The player could be faking. How and this is obviously not what happened, but
I mean, clearly.
Yeah, clearly this isn't what happened, but it could occur. Yeah. It could occur. Oh, my head, I'm really affected. I need to go off and have a break. The player knows I'm not concussed. I'll go past all those colours. We'll get a free player out for 10 minutes. I'll come back on. No interchange was used. And they'll be in the bin for 10 minutes. I'm helping my team. So it encourages players in some way to sort of stay down. But, I will say this. The inconsistency is there. Obviously, Soliola stayed on the field. Jennings, for something I would say much less, has now been suspended and sin bin for it. So,
yeah. I just want to clear something up quickly, I don't agree with the suspension at all. He shouldn't be suspended. The sin bin I do, obviously, because I said it makes both teams 16 men, makes it equal.
Yeah.
Just on what you said before, though, I did notice about a player faking and saying, well, I'll go off pass with flying colours, the HIA, come back on and they'll have a place in the bin. That player in the sin bin would come back before the players come back from the HIA anyway, because it is 15 minutes. So it's not an advantage in that sense, but I do get what you mean, as in the sin bin, it throws the team off when a player gets put in the sin bin. So I just cleared that up, and I want to make very clear that I do not agree with the suspension, because it could be accidental. But even if it is accidental and the player goes off, I know it's harsh on my end, but I still believe there should be a sin bin just to make the game fair, but definitely not a suspension. Definitely not for what Jennings did too, because it did look very accidental.
So we're on the different side of the fence here. I'm saying no, he shouldn't have been sin bin. You're on yes. What I'm going to do now, guys, is bring the video up for our viewers at home to make their decision. Again, this is for review purposes only.
Wonga Blake loses possession.
Just after this Wonga Blake call here, guys, it will come up. Here we go.
Lost the ball and a great tackle around the legs by Brown. That was outstanding for the first gamer. And Seaver's going to run away.
And we'll watch the replay again, guys. He does collect him, but as you can see, Isaiah Yeo is falling.
Jennings makes high contact on Isaiah Yeo, causing the ball to be lost. We have a decision.
He's on report. Isaiah Yeo's unlikely to return for the rest of the game, so you're on the bin for 10 minutes. There you go. Foul play.
There you go. And as Ashley Klein said, you're on report. He's unlikely to return, so you're in the bin for 10 minutes. You can see Jennings, Sean Lane there, and Clint Gutherson are all a little bit confused there, but that's what happened, guys. And now you've seen the footage yourself. I'm sure you might have seen it earlier, but please leave a comment now that you've seen it fresh and let us know whether you think yes, no matter whether it's accidental or intentional, go for 10 minutes regardless, or no, you cannot be sin bin for accidents that occur in a collision sport. We'll move to our fourth tackle now, Ozza. Something we saw, unfortunately, 3 times this weekend, twice by Adam Fanua-Blake, once by Matt Lodge. Attacking the kicker's legs. Should we be lighter or harsher around this?
Harsher.
Okay. Why do you believe that?
It obviously hasn't yet, but that could result in a serious injury. I mean, you could injure your legs, you could fall on your head, anything like that. It is dangerous, and I don't like seeing it in the game. Too many times, it's become a normal thing for a kicker to get taken out after they've put the kick in, and it's become such a normal thing, not necessarily taking out the legs, but at least, tackling the kicker so they've kicked the ball. It's become such a regular occurrence that they don't usually get punished for it anymore. So I think we do need to get a little bit harsher, sort of at least get the taking out the legs out of the game, because for me, it's similar to when a player's tackled in the air when they're catching the ball. Obviously, the kicker doesn't have the ball, they've just kicked it, but it's still similar. You're still taking out the legs. So why is it a serious infringement? Well, I guess it's seen as a more serious infringement to actually take out a player in the air while they're catching the ball than a kicker actually being taken out after they've kicked the ball. It's pretty much the same for me. So how long did Matt Lodge get? Was it 2 weeks?
2 weeks for Matt Lodge, 1 week for Adam Fanua-Blake.
They're lucky. I think 4.
Yeah? Okay,
4.
well, I don't necessarily agree with 4, but I do agree with you. We need to be harsher. But I'm thinking more harsher from an on-field stance, and I'll get to that eventually.
Okay.
So obviously, Benji Marshall was hit late by Adam Fanua-Blake, and Cameron Munster was hit late by Matt Lodge. Do I have a problem with tackling the kicker? Of course not. Pressuring the kicker is a part of the game. It's integral in trying to put off their kick. But most importantly, you can't just not tackle them. What if they pretend to kick and then take off and score? But you just cannot lunge at them so recklessly as both Matt Lodge and Adam Fanua-Blake did. It was completely reckless. You need to have a sense of, I can seriously injure this person, which brings me to our next point. Is it going to take a serious leg, ankle, knee injury for the NRL to really clamp down on this? Now, in the NRL's defense, Matt Lodge has gone for 2 weeks and Fanua-Blake 1.
Yeah.
I'm somewhat happy with those decisions, but I want to see something done on the field. And for me, as I said, is it honestly going to take something very serious before we put in steps to make sure this doesn't happen? In my opinion, I don't think it's worth a 10-minute sin bin at all, Ozza.
Okay.
I think it's worth a 5-minute sin bin, which will take me to tackle 5, unless you have anything else on this point before we move on.
No.
All right, well, let's go to tackle 5. Should the 5-minute sin bin return, Ozza? Yes or no, and why?
Yes, for smaller infringements, like you've said. We don't necessarily feel like everything's worth 10 minutes in the bin. Maybe the Michael Jennings incident, if the referee goes, okay, I've still got to sin bin you because he's not going to be back for the rest of the game, but it looked like an accident to me. I'll give you 5 in the bin instead of 10. Something like that.
I agree. I'm a big fan of this returning, Oz, because it minimises the gap between fans and, fans going, wow, that's not a sin bin. And then on the other hand is, how was that not a sin bin? It minimises the gap between those two, I'm sure, commonly said phrases throughout an NRL round. Give me your yes or no for some examples here. 5-minute sin bin for attacking the kicker's legs.
I'd probably still go with 10 for that one just because it can result in a worse off injury.
Sure. You're defending your try line and you give 3 penalties. The player that gives the 3rd penalty, do they go for 5 minutes?
They go for 5 minutes because there's no real threat of injury through that.
Yep. Similar situation to Jennings, an accidental head high that results in a HIA to an opposition player. 5 minutes in the sin bin, yes or no?
If we can clearly say logically that it is 5 minutes, which usually that it is accidental, which usually we can, then it's 5 minutes. Yeah.
Late contact on a playmaker. Now, I'm not talking kicking in this instance. I'm talking, I think back to maybe Luke Brooks, Jonathan Thurston, taking the ball to the line, passing, you relax, and then bam. 5 minutes for that?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
And what about a minimal / borderline professional foul? Let's say, for instance, Corey Oates has made a break. He runs to the halfway line from his try line, so he's gone 50 metres, and he's held down a little bit too long. Obviously, it's not a hefty professional foul because they're not in a proper attacking position, but it is a professional foul of nature. 5 minutes in the bin?
5 minutes.
Absolutely, and I believe that is... I've got one more. Dissent to a referee. Giving the referee a little bit of lip that he's not happy with it. I'm not talking, serious offences like, you're a cheat, something like that. That's a send-off. I agree with that. Just something little like, he says to the captain, I'm not going to hear from you, or I'm only going to talk to the captain. Someone else comes out and goes, oh, ref, 5 minutes in the bin, yes or no?
Yeah.
I agree.
5 minutes.
And so from those examples there, I believe there was only one where you didn't agree it should be utilised. Obviously, I wrote them down because I believe that situations where they should be utilised. And guys, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 examples there. 7 examples where we both agree, yes, a 5-minute sin bin could be used. I think it needs to return to the game. And as I said, my reasoning is it minimises the gap between that's not a sin bin and how was that not a sin bin. It sort of meets in the middle there. Obviously, losing a player for 5 minutes isn't huge. But in terms of the other team, if you're able to build some pressure, get a repeat set, you have 2 or 3 sets of 6 there where you can really make something happen and turn the tides in a game for a minimal offence. Anything further from you, Oz, before we move on to our 6th and last tackle?
I guess to sort of sum up for me, if an offence, there we go, I got there eventually. If one of these offences can result in a serious injury, like taking out the legs, then it is 100% at least 10 minutes. I think if it's something that cannot result in injury, 5 minutes, because we really need to set a precedent to stop these injuries from happening off these foul plays.
Absolutely. All right, this next 6th tackle, guys, we like to run it on the last. This is going to upset some people. We're not just going to be doing this once. This will be the 6th tackle for round 10 and for round 20. So we're going to, I guess, periodically review this through the season. Obviously, we're doing contender or pretender for your team, and we're going to give a one sentence accompanying our reason. At this stage of the year, I admit for my list, I've got a lot more contenders than pretenders because I think it's still too early to rule out most teams based on what we've seen from one round of footy, guys. Let's start with the Brisbane Broncos. I have them as contenders. I have the loss to the Storm shows nothing. There is no shame in losing to the Melbourne Storm in round 1 at Amy Park. What have you got for the Bronx?
Pretenders. too inexperienced for me. A lot of talent, a bit of inexperience. I think they'll end up showing a bit of inconsistency, maybe in the halves as well.
Can't argue with that. I mean, one thing Sterlo brought up on the Channel 9 round wrap-up, it's a YouTube thing, he said Nikorima and Milford are great halves when the game's going the Broncos' way. When they need to, when the game's not going the Broncos' way, he said they really struggle. And I agree with Sterlo there. Let's go. St. George Illawarra Dragons. Contenders, although I believe they need to sort a genuine leader within that spine before I can definitely say that.
I'm going to say pretenders at the moment for the same reason they did. From the highlights that I've gone back and watched, obviously I didn't see the game live, and from what I've heard people say, this spine at the moment is just not working out for the Dragons.
Can I just ask, how many pretenders do you have? Because you're being pretty savage here. I've tend to go a little bit nice, so at least I know all the hateful comments are going to be directed your direction, not mine.
I'll put it this way. I've got Dragons 7th on the ladder, and I've got them as a pretender. Anyone above them, so I'm going to have 6 contenders.
Okay, I've got a lot more contenders than that. Let's go South Sydney Rabbitohs. I've got contender because Wayne Bennett continues to show me he is one of the best coaches in the game, particularly around getting his troops ready and firing for game day.
Contenders because of that squad. It's an amazing squad. They'll continue to be amazing. They've got a lot of young talent. Cough, cough, Corey Allen, cough, cough, who's somehow been dropped this week.
Well, I want to talk about that if we can stop here.
Mm.
He scored a hat-trick against them
Yep.
in the Charity Shield, and he's dropped. The only thing I can think that makes sense here, Oz, is Wayne Bennett's looking at Jack DeBellin out, he's looking at Frizzell out, and he's looking at Corbin Sims still suspended, and he's thinking, okay, I'll bring an extra forward and we'll really beat him through the middle here. That's the only thing I can think of, but it's crazy, right? You drop a player who scored a hat-trick 2 weeks ago against a team. That's literally unheard of in NRL history. What do you have to do? Score 4 tries? Or it's a tough one. Yeah. So you've got the Rabbits as contenders also.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to a team the Rabbitohs beat last week. Sydney Roosters. I have contenders. They are the best team in the competition, and they will bounce back this week in style. I'm sorry, Manly fans, but this is going to be a slaughter, in my opinion.
Contenders, and I believe that they'll be contenders even more now that they've lost in round 1, which might seem odd.
There you go. Canterbury Bulldogs. Everyone pause because I'm about to drop the word that's going to get me in trouble. Pretenders. They were thumped in round 1, guys. There was no leadership or defense. 38 missed tackles is very concerning in round 1 when defense is your massive focus on the off-season.
I mean, most people would probably know that I've been backing the Dogs to have a good year. Still miss the 8, but have a good year. But I'm going to have to go pretenders here. I don't really see them coming anywhere near that premiership, even if they did make the 8.
New Zealand Warriors. Again, this is controversial. I have pretenders still, despite that massive win. Consistency will continue to be the Warriors' downfall throughout 2019.
Pretenders, same reason.
Yeah, just like... They obviously... Saturday's win was emotionally charged and it was great to watch, but I still have a question mark next to consistency for the Warriors.
Yep.
However, if what I saw in round 1 continues, when I review this in round 10, they'll definitely be getting a contender there. Melbourne Storm, contenders, because Jerome Hughes looks amazing and he fits in well.
Pretenders because I'm an idiot. No, contenders, obviously. I mean, come on.
Yeah, you can never rule out a team coached by Craig Bellamy. Cronulla Sharks. I still have contenders because that team is amazing, but they need to improve sharply and very fast. Hopefully not in round 2, though.
Oh, yeah, hopefully not. I've still got them contenders. I think they will in round 2, just to spoil my prediction there.
Yeah.
Contenders, a lot of people have them pretenders and don't think that they'll even make the 8 because they've had a bad preseason. Like 5 rounds in, usually we tend to forget about the preseason, and so will the Sharks, and so will the Panthers as well.
Yep.
So I think their footy will do the talking for the majority of the season.
I can almost predict your prediction on the next one. Parramatta Eels, I have pretenders. A lot of their squad has been told you will not be re-signed, and when you're playing for a contract, it will spark certain performances where we say, wow, but it will not be consistent throughout 2019.
Pretenders as well. Certain players looked good against Penrith, but I'm going to be honest, at that game, Parramatta has received a lot of praise. Both teams were pretty crap. Penrith was crapper.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it, but in my opinion, Parramatta didn't win that game. The Panthers lost that game. It was just shocking to watch the amount of errors. North Queensland Cowboys, I have contenders, and I have 3 words. Tamalalo and Morgan, full stop.
Who's End? I've never heard of End playing for the Cowboys. Pretenders, as a lot of you guys would know, I've got them missing the 8. And yes, I've still got them missing the 8. It's been round 1. Look, they've obviously got a few new players in the side. They look good so far, but I've just got the feeling with the Cowboys, they might actually be one of the top sides after 5 rounds or so. But I believe the inconsistency will sort of continue from 2018 because it's still relatively the same side. Even if Taumalolo has a great individual year, I still see a bit of inconsistency. I see patches where they'll win 5 in a row, they'll lose 7 in a row, they'll win so much in a row. It'll be inconsistent as where they'll be contenders for the top 8, but I still think they'll miss out.
Okay, so you think it's consistency they'll need before you can label them contenders?
Yeah.
West Tigers, I have contenders. However, I believe they need to continue improving their attack as they cannot rely on a Robbie Farah double to get them out of most games.
Yeah, I've got them pretenders for the probably the same reason as well. I just need to see more out of the Tigers. They are one of the teams. Look, I'm going to wait at least 5 rounds before I make any changes to my ladder predictions.
Sure.
After this game, I'm sort of thinking maybe the Tigers, but they did beat my pick for the wooden spoon, so that should be expected. And look, to be honest, after the first half, it was a little bit poor, especially because of the weather. That's really one of the games where the weather really affected it, with a lot of errors from both sides. So I'm going to need to see more out of the Tigers.
Newcastle Knights, contenders because David Klemmer is the forward leader they needed.
Contenders because they have got a great side across the park, which I believe was proven in the game against Cronulla.
Can they beat the Panthers this weekend? For me, that's pretty impressive. They can beat two of... Cronulla weren't top 8 last year. They were top 5?
Top 4.
Top 4, there you go. Can they beat 2 top 4 teams? Panthers were top 4 as well, am I correct?
Nah, they finished 5th
or 6th. 5th. Okay, sorry, I had them mixed up. Well, 2 of the top teams from last year, if they can do that back-to-back, that's impressive for me. Manly Sea Eagles, please don't kill me, Manly fans, and I know a lot of the Manly players follow. I don't know if they watch, but they definitely follow. Pretenders, no depth, no outside strike.
Jeff, I'm sorry, mate. I'm going to have to do it. Yeah. Pretenders, you're getting the spoon, and I mean... The main cause of that isn't going to be anything on the field, really. I think it is that financial restrictions. They're really holding you down, Manly, from getting some depth.
Penrith Panthers, contenders. They shot themselves in the foot last weekend. They'll need to improve and bounce back.
Contenders, Penrith usually have a shit start to the season.
All right,
but they usually bounce back and have a good run of games.
Canberra Raiders, contenders. Their defense looks to have improved sharply, but this weekend against the Melbourne Storm will determine whether I change that or not.
Pretenders, I've got them finishing 3rd last, and I guess my prediction of them being 0-10 after 10 games and Sticky getting the sack is out the window now, thanks to the Titans. But I mean, I still think they'll probably be down there. They beat a Titans side that's still got to find their feet a bit. And, you know, the weather didn't help as well. So, again, certain players looked good, but it's exactly like Penrith and Parramatta. I think Canberra didn't play very well as well. A lot of errors, but the Titans were worse. So,
and before I go on to the last team we're going to touch on, I'm going to put this hat on and preface that this next statement may be biased. Contenders.
Yeah.
We lost both of our halves very early on. Having your star halfback, Ash Taylor, ruled out and then losing your other directional half, Tyron Roberts, early into the game. We struggled because there was a lack of leadership within the spine. That contributed to the consistent errors throughout that game. I think we've wiped that game from our memories and we move on.
Pretenders, and I've got them scraping into the top 8. Scraping into the top 8. I know that a lot of you guys, I guess justifiably so. I am a Titans fan. Putting the Titans in the 8, it's not a popular decision. But in saying that, I think that they will scrape in, and I think that they'll get beat the first week of the semis. A good side, a side that should definitely be contending for the finals. But they're just like the Dragons, who I've also got in the top 8. I don't see them really getting anywhere near that premiership.
All right, guys. Well, that wraps up the Set of 6 podcast this week. Obviously, a lot shorter than usual. That is because the format is, of course, changing in some ways. Obviously, in the off-season, there wasn't too much to touch on in terms of controversy topics and topics you can really be discussed among the fans. It was more giving our thoughts and opinions on news. Whereas with the season back, we now have an opportunity to talk on big talking points from games, which we hope we did tonight. 3 things to bring up before we leave. One from me. Sponsorship. If you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, I know on YouTube alone it fetches around 500 views weekly. So if you are interested in that, obviously it'll be a very good deal for yourself, and we're willing to work with anyone within reason. Second, please let us know your thoughts on everything spoken about today, whether you have a comment going from the start or you want to go back and touch on some of the topics now. We're very interested to hear from you, and that is the main purpose of this podcast, to spark discussion and debate among rugby league fans. And third, you guys know we're always looking to improve, so if you have any suggestions, things you would like to see added or removed from the show, we are thinking in some ways of bringing this to a live format and having people able to call in and give their thoughts and opinions as the show progresses. If that's something you'd like to see, any feedback is heavily welcomed and we do appreciate it a lot. That is all from me. Thank you so much for tuning in to this Set of 6 podcast, a weekly podcast where we touch on not all, 6 of the largest talking points from the round. My social medias are above my head if you're interested in following me, and I'll hand over to you, Ozza, to say goodbye.
Go with God.